I'm Pat Whitlow. I am the Director of Nationally Competitive Awards at the University of Kentucky, and I want to thank you all for logging in this evening. I was very fortunate because I've had the opportunity to work with Esther, who's now visual there on the upper screen. For me, I should probably do the same. Hello, Esther. Good to see you. Esther was a student here at UK and accomplished many things. She was a Chelgren Fellow and in the Honors College, and worked for Space Tango. Was it? Okay. I was like, oh, I should know that. And also was a recipient of this Brooke Owens Fellowship, and so did some very important internships in California, and is now in graduate school in Colorado in her field of interest, and she's going to talk about that in aerospace. And so she's a big promoter of the Brooke Owens Fellowship, and now I know she's also working with an additional fellowship program. So I'm really delighted that Esther can speak to us tonight about this. And do you want to just take over, Esther? Or are there other things that you want me to go over first? First of all, I think we're a fairly small group. If people have questions, do you want them to put them in the chat box, or do you want them to just unmute and ask you? What is your preference?
How about we have people put a question mark in the chat box, and then I can direct attention to it and have them unmute.
Wonderful. So I can also kind of pay attention to that and help you with that if you have. Well, with that, I'll turn it over to you, Esther. It's really wonderful to see you on the Zoom screen where we're seeing everybody these days, and but really happy to have you back with the UK community, if only for the evening.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So today I'd like to talk about the Brooke Owens Fellowship, which I was a part of, but also the Matthew Isakowitz Fellowship, which I personally was not a part of, but I am very familiar with. I know many people who were, and it is open to a little bit larger of a population than the Brooke Owens Fellowship. So I figure we could talk about both for those who may be interested. So I'll start with a little bit about me. So yes, I did graduate from the University of Kentucky in 2019. I have dual degrees in biology and neuroscience. When I was at UK, I worked for Space Tango, which is a company that designs research hardware and manufacturing hardware for the International Space Station for commercial work. And I worked as a biological research and design intern with them. So essentially what I did is I helped give constraints to the engineering team for anything that they had that came in contact with biological materials. I also worked at NASA. I was part of a program called the Space Life Sciences Training Program, which is kind of like a summer internship cohort. And there I was doing research on bone marrow stem cell differentiation to kind of look at the problem that astronauts face when they go into space where they lose bone density and how we can solve that. And then my summer between junior and senior year, I was a Brooke Owens Fellow, and I interned at a company called Vulcan, which is in Seattle. And Vulcan uses a lot of tech development for philanthropic work, and I was specifically helping their machine learning and AI teams who were developing monitoring algorithms for predicting where illegal poaching activity would occur, for looking at climate change events, for looking at things like coral reef bleaching. So I helped them kind of come up with different symptoms and indicators of these types of events and find data sets from satellite imagery to train their machine learning algorithms. I also was an astronaut scholar. I know that's another award that is open to many of you. So if there are questions about that, I can talk about that too. So now I am a master's student at the University of Colorado at Boulder. I am currently in a dual master's program in aerospace engineering with a focus in bioastronautics, as well as engineering management. So, and my research here at CU is about vestibular function in pilots and astronauts. But I'm going to start talking about the Brooke Owens Fellowship. I will talk about the Matthew Isakowitz Fellowship later. If you have questions as I'm speaking, go ahead and feel free to put a question mark in the chat. I want this to be conversational, especially since we've got a nice small group here. So no worries, interrupt me with any questions. The most important thing that I think everyone should know is the deadline for the Brooke Owens Fellowship is rapidly approaching. It is October 4th, so keep that in mind as I'm talking. So the Brooke Owens Fellowship program is a paid internship experience for undergraduate gender minorities. So if you are a woman or non-binary, and you're interested in aviation or aerospace, this is an opportunity for you. And you have to be an undergraduate student. You can be a freshman through a senior. We have people do the fellowship this summer after they graduate, and that's the last time that you can do it. And it is open to people from all majors. I obviously was not an engineering student as an undergrad, but there were lots of fellows in this program that were. We also have people from business and policy, journalism, education, pretty much anything that you can imagine. And there's a picture of some of the fellows from a couple different years and some of the founders of the program. So this fellowship was created in honor of a woman named Brooke Owens, who was an absolute game changer in this industry. And she passed away from cancer quite young. And so some of the people who worked with her in the industry who were really touched and impacted by her work decided to create this fellowship to continue her legacy and help other women in aerospace who were interested in being game changers to find a community within each other and get some experience. So there's a lot of reasons I think that you should apply. This fellowship is an incredible experience for networking. Of course, the opportunity to get an internship with some really incredible companies, a paid internship at that. We also have a summit each summer for fellows. And they bring fellows who are interning from all across the country to Washington, D.C. for this kind of 5-day experience where you work on solving big global issues in aerospace, meeting different mentors within the industry, talking about interviews and how to apply for jobs, how to negotiate your salary, a lot of really great things. And you're also, when you're selected as a fellow, you are paired with an industry mentor. And this mentor is kind of yours for the summer and continuing on into your career. My mentor is a man named Chris Leinhart. He is a doctor of medicine and is a professor at the Baylor School of Medicine, and also is very high up in the human research program at the Johnson Space Center, makes a lot of medical decisions for astronauts. And that was an incredible experience for me because I am so interested in aerospace medicine and blending kind of the fields of medicine and engineering. So some of the host institutions that you can get matched with if you're selected for this fellowship are on this list. There's actually kind of a rotating selection of hosts each year, and lots of really big names in the industry, things like SpaceX, Blue Origin, NASA, the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. You can see Vulcan, where I interned. Some big players in space policy and aerospace security, like Bryce and CSIS. Made in Space, some really, really great companies. And as you know, these are very competitive internships. And so it's kind of nice to be able to apply through the Brooke Owens Fellowship because they have such a rapport with these companies. And the application process, which I'll get into, is a little bit different for the Brooke Owens Fellowship than it is for a standard application into an internship. I think you get to express who you are and a little bit more and be a little more creative. And I thought that that was a fun way to get involved with some of these companies. So I talked about the mentorship aspect of the Brooke Owens Fellowship. There's tons and tons of mentors. They kind of rotate. We actually have a waiting list of people in the industry who want to be mentors for this program, and they evaluate it kind of on a case-by-case basis so that each Brookie, which is what we call ourselves, I've probably said that, but each Brookie gets matched with a mentor that is specifically fit for them and their desires in the industry. So we've got some crazy, amazing people like Anusha Ansari, who was one of the first privately funded astronauts and is the CEO of X Prize. Janet Karika, who is the chief of staff at NASA. We've got Charlie Bolden, who's an astronaut and was a former NASA administrator. Emily Calandrelli, who has a new show on Netflix called Emily's Wonder Lab. She's also a correspondent on Bill Nye Saves the World. Lots of just really incredible people who are a part of this fellowship. And so you get paired with an executive mentor who is like your one-on-one mentor for the summer, but you also have a lot of opportunities to meet with and get mentorship from all of the people who are involved in this fellowship. So my personal mentor was Dr. Chris Leinhart, but I've talked to everyone on this list in a one-on-one capacity throughout my time in the fellowship. So, all right, so I'll get into the application now. So this is due October 4th. I believe they are opening the online portal for you to start submitting this information this Saturday. But if you go to the Brooke Owens website, which I'll put the link in a little bit, you can see in great detail everything that is a part of the application. So there's a general info type form, and you do need 2 letters of recommendation. And there's some information on the website about where they suggest that these letters come from and how these letters be written. So definitely check that out, but you can have people submit letters directly to the fellowship even now before the online portal has opened. You need a resume or a CV and then a current transcript from your university. An unofficial one is okay, and if you are a freshman, they suggest that you send a high school transcript as well. And then you have 3 kind of essay pieces about you. One is a short essay of 250 words. One is a long essay of 750 words. And then what's really unique to this fellowship is you have to have a multimedia essay. And this can be really anything. And I promise you, you name it, and this fellowship has received it. You can submit videos, artworks, poems, cartoons, short stories, dances, skits. We've had people make music compositions. I personally did a video. I know one person did a dance performance. Lots of really different things. And the prompts for these essays, there's a bunch to choose from, and you get to pick kind of what fits you and what you want to highlight about yourself and share with this fellowship. So you can see all of those on the website. But I will emphasize that this fellowship is really dedicated to bringing people in who are unique, who are creative, and part of your score in the selection process for this fellowship is something that they call Brookiness. And it's based off of the characteristics of Brooke Owens, the woman who this fellowship was created for. And she was this very creative individual. She cared a lot about her community. She was very passionate about bringing more women into the aerospace industry and supporting them. And so they look for a lot of that in these applications. So individuality is key. And that's not always the case sometimes with academic fellowships. So it's an interesting process. And like I said, the deadline is October 4th. So keep that in mind. And then here are some of the big questions that we get a lot. Yes, you can apply as a freshman, but send in a high school transcript since you probably don't have much on your undergrad transcript yet. Yes, you can apply as a senior, so long as you are pursuing a bachelor's degree as of, I actually think October 2021. But if you graduate this May, you can apply to be a Brooke Owens Fellow. We have lots of people do that. A lot of people use the fellowship as a transition between undergrad and starting their full-time career. And a lot of people end up starting their full-time career with the host institution that they intern at as part of this fellowship. So that's cool. Now, if you are not a woman or a gender minority, this is the fellowship for you. This is the Matthew Isakowitz Fellowship Program. It is somewhat similar to the Brooke Owens Fellowship. It was also inspired by an incredible individual in the aerospace industry who passed away very young. Matthew Isakowitz was an engineer, entrepreneur, just an all-around incredible person. And this was started by his family to kind of honor his legacy. So similar to the Brooke Owens Fellowship Program, the Matthew Isakowitz Fellowship Program is a summer internship, a mentorship experience. They also have a summit, and they also do a lot of networking. So like I said, they're very, very similar. And this fellowship is open to any individual, regardless of gender identity, who is a junior, a senior, or a graduate student. So for those of you who are further along in undergrad or transitioning into graduate school, this might be a better option as well. So a lot of similar host companies, a lot of really great ones, Blue Origin, SpaceX, Virgin Orbit, some really great companies. There's only a few companies I think that are isolated to one fellowship versus the other. So if you're looking for an internship at one specific company, that might dictate which one you apply to. I believe NanoRacks is only a Matthew fellowship host company and is not a Brooke Owens. A lot of great executive mentors within this program as well. CEOs, former astronauts, directors and vice presidents and presidents of various large companies within the aerospace industry. And these are just incredible, incredible people to know. I have to say, it's been, I guess, over 2 years now since I was a Brooke Owens Fellow, and I'm in contact with people I met through this fellowship on a day-to-day basis when I am working with different companies through my research and my job. When I'm applying for internships or awards or fellowships, it's really great to be associated with this network of people. It's very highly respected within this industry. So yes, there's also a summit for the Matthew Isakowitz Fellowship, where the Brooke Owens Fellowship Summit occurs in Washington, D.C., and involves kind of exploring the DC aerospace community. The Matthew Isakowitz program has their summit in LA, and they kind of go around the different Southern California aerospace companies. Lots of very exciting people involved in both summits. I know Buzz Aldrin has showed up to this summit a couple of times. Elon Musk has as well. So if you're looking to meet either of those very important people. And then of course, networking as well. Just a huge part of both fellowships. And I think was really one of the most powerful takeaways from my experience. I mean, internships are awesome and so great, and mentorship is so great, but really that network is invaluable in this industry. So some of the key dates for this fellowship, it's very similar. The application actually opened yesterday, and it is due November 13th. So you have a little bit more time for the deadlines for this fellowship. It has some similar requirements, but again, just check out that website to keep track of exactly what is involved. And then both fellowships have kind of an interesting interview process. So with the Brooke Owens Fellowship, you are selected for an interview. If you are selected for an interview, they call that the first round, and you have an interview within the fellowship. So you are interviewed by one of the founders of the fellowship or one of the members of the selection committee. And those are usually comprised of either former fellows or some of the mentors from the program. And then if you make it through that round, you are then sent into company interviews. And what will happen is you will match with a couple different companies. You'll be interviewed by all of them. And only if one of those companies offers you an internship are you then selected as a fellow. So that can be kind of confusing. That there's kind of two stages of selection, and that you could make it through one but still not be a fellow. Unfortunately, that does happen. But I think one thing is this program is ultimately up to the host institutions to decide who they want as interns. And oftentimes your interview with a host institution is pretty much the same as you would experience if you had just applied straight to a job at SpaceX. They like to keep those processes across the board for all of their interns. But so for both, interviews happen around December. In January, you're matched with host companies. And then both of these fellowships occur in the summer of 2021 with summits in July. Now, depending on COVID, we'll see if those end up being in person. So the fellowships this summer ended up being, for the most part, remote work. I will say another kind of benefit of being a fellow, both of these fellowships fought tooth and nail for every member to have an internship this summer, despite changes due to COVID. It involved a lot of companies shifting people around and finding new job application types. Oh, I'm missing chat questions. Okay, is there a recording posted somewhere after? Yes. Yeah, okay, cool. Yes, so being part of this fellowship with COVID is a possibility. And they are working very hard to make sure that everyone has a great internship experience regardless. Okay, so here is the website for Matthew Isakowitz, and I actually have a slide coming up with contact information for both fellowships. Okay, here is contact information for the Brooke Owens Fellowship. I'll give you all a second to write stuff down, take a picture, whatever you'd like. My contact information is also on this slide. This email is a little easier to reach me at. And also the Brooke Owens Fellowship website has a feature called Ask a Brookie. Basically, you can submit a question about anything really, about the application, about the internship experience, about how to prepare for an interview, anything you want. And we will redistribute those questions to former brookies. There's now about 150 of us across the country from all different areas of the industry, all different schools, states, communities, and we get matched with people to help them make their way through this industry. And you do not need to be a brookie to use that function. Feel free to use it at any point in your job search process, applying for other awards and fellowships. We really want to reach out to women and gender minorities across the industry to kind of make a community for each other. And here is social media information about the fellowship, the website, Instagram, Twitter. They're very active on all of these things. They answer questions all the time. And I will say the Brooke Owens Fellowship is working really, really hard to make this application low stress and as equitable as possible. So feel free to ask any questions, any clarifications, get as much help as you would like. I also would love to help anyone who is applying for this. As it stands, I am currently the only person from the state of Kentucky who has received this fellowship. And I would really like that to change this year, especially as their numbers are growing so quickly. So feel free to let me know. For the Matthew Isakowitz Fellowship Program, here's some information for them as well. Also very active on social media, and their website has a lot of information about the specifics of the application process. So feel free to write that down, take pictures. And then some of the questions that I've gotten and some other people have gotten from people who are looking at these fellowships. Do you need to be a US citizen? So for the Brooke Owens Fellowship Program, no. And we actually have had fellows who are not US citizens. But some host institutions, especially because this is aerospace and defense, will not accept interns who are not US citizens. There's a list on the Brooke Owens Fellowship website that delineates which host institutions are for US citizens or green card holders only. So feel free to check that out. For the Matthew program, however, they only allow US citizens because of their host institutions and regulations and restrictions within those. So another consideration to keep in mind. how many fellows will be selected. So for the Brooke Owens Fellowship Program, it's typically between 36 and 40. This number fluctuates year to year. They do try to keep these cohorts somewhat small because the cohort experience is a big part of this fellowship. They don't want it to be too large. It is open to anyone from across the United States and outside for the Brooke Owens Fellowship. And I will say it is quite competitive. There's about 500 to 600 applicants for the Brooke Owens Fellowship each year. I don't know the specific numbers for the Matthew program, but I would imagine it's somewhat similar. So do not be discouraged. Apply multiple times if need be. Tons and tons of applicants experience that. So the Matthew Isakowitz Fellowship program is slightly smaller. They accept around 24 individuals. Will I be paid? Yes, you will be paid, and you will be paid handsomely. Both fellowships require host institutions to offer paid internships at a living wage. They actually fight for these fellowships to offer housing stipends, relocation stipends as well. I have heard from many people that Brooke Owens and Matthew Isakowitz Fellowship recipients are oftentimes the highest paid interns at companies. Because the founders of these programs are doing the fighting behind the scenes on your behalf. So very great. There's no set pay rate. It depends on which host institution you end up interning with and the geographical location and the cost of living in that location. But I will say it is quite competitive. How does it work? So I talked a little bit about this earlier, but the first step in the process is an interview with individuals from the fellowship themselves, so whether that be founders or previous members, etc. And then you will be selected, if you were selected as a finalist, you get paired with matched companies between 1 and 4, and it's up to those companies to then interview you. And the companies will interview anywhere from, I think, 4 to 10 finalists for each fellowship. They submit their top 3, and then the fellowship decides who is selected. Some companies will accept more than 1 fellow. I think SpaceX and Blue Origin usually have like 2 to 3 because they're a larger company. Some of the smaller companies will only have 1. And then if you make it through that process, if you are at the top of a host company's list, then you are selected as a fellow. I will say you also can indicate your desires as a fellow for which host company you would like to be paired with. They can take that into consideration if, say, you interviewed at 3 places and 2 of them listed you as your number 1, but you said you want to work at SpaceX, then they will pair you with that. So they are really committed to making sure that you are paired with a company that you actually want to work for, with work that you actually want to do in a place that you want to be at. And there's also in the Brooke Owens Fellowship Program, part of the process is you select what is most important to you when being matched with a company. There's like a list of, I think, 15 or so different items like geographical location, what type of work is being done, the company atmosphere, things like that. So you can select what is most important to you. Personally, I don't like working. I don't allow myself to work on defense industry. And I indicated that in my fellowship, and they respected that and paired me with a company that does not do defense work. So those types of things are an option. So after you are notified, you get assigned to a mentor, and then you do your fellowship, and then you have the summit. So those are the steps. The summit, as I mentioned before, is just a really great opportunity for you to meet everyone else who's a part of the program, as well as all of the other mentors, even the ones that you're not specifically assigned to. So those are the approximate dates. I will say, due to COVID this summer, those summits did not happen, and they happened in a virtual format instead. Hopefully that will not be the case. The in-person summit was like the highlight of my summer as a Brooke Owens Fellow, so I really hope that that is an opportunity that gets to come back. But note on the summit, your host company pays for your travel expenses. to and from the summit and your hotel and everything. So it truly is a summer where like everything is taken care of for you. So, all right. With all of that very lengthy information, I will open up to any questions about either program. So feel free.
Esther, I have a question. I know these are not required to go through the fellowship office. You just contacted me because we know each other and asked me to help you get the information out. But are students, and do you encourage them to ask for readers of their materials before they submit them? Can you talk about how you handled your application?
Absolutely. Yes, I would suggest for any award or fellowship application that you get other eyes on your materials before you submit them. I would offer to look over, but we've had a lot of discussions within the fellowship about keeping the process equitable so that students who don't have a previous fellow from their school have an equal opportunity. So I am not allowed to make edits to anyone's application, but I am allowed to answer any questions. So if you have questions and you would like me to be involved, please let me know. I can also give you some pointers about what I did, what I wrote, what they're kind of looking for, things like that. But I think it's always a good idea, just in case, like catching grammatical errors and like little things and making sure that your tone is coming across correctly to your audience. I think it's always a good idea to have someone look over and edit.
I think that is a good idea as well as reading the application materials very thoroughly before you begin.
Absolutely. And I will say the Brick Owens Fellowship website has like a 7-page info about the application process, exactly what they're looking for, exactly what steps are required, and some considerations like previous winners have shared like steps along the way type information. So definitely use those to your advantage. Look at the social media. And I will say specifically for the Brick Owens Fellowship, there's actually a Slack that has been created for everyone who is applying to help each other. So that information is on the website as well, but a great place to get someone else to look over your application. And also always take it to the Nationally Competitive Awards office and they can help as well.
You can, and I would love to help ask her questions. The deadline is a little tricky for me because we have a lot of fellowships too around the same time. So I will say that up front. Do we have other questions from students in the audience? Please don't be shy to ask a question. Esther's been doing this for a couple of years, so I imagine she's heard a lot of the questions.
Yeah, any questions about anything about the process, my experience, what my internship was like, anything like that. Well, I guess I have a question for you all. Is anyone not an engineer? You can, if you would prefer, you can reply in the chat what your field of study is.
I have a question about the interview process. Was it more like behavioral or technical, or was it kind of a mix of both?
That's a great question. So the first interview is more behavioral, more personal about you, your passion in the industry, your previous experience. The host interviews can range from being somewhat personal to very technical. Sorry, someone is vacuuming in the hallway. For my personal experience, I was paired with 3 companies. Only 2 of them ended up interviewing me. And that happens. Sometimes the host companies are like, never mind, we don't want you. And totally fine, happens. One of them was very personal. That ended up being the company I worked for. The other was a case study interview because it was a consulting firm. So the fellowship will guide host institutions to let you know beforehand. But I would say expect a mix.
Cool, thank you.
Absolutely. No? Okay. Well, I can talk a little bit more about my specific internship, if that's helpful. Because I will say another thing these fellowships really do try to emphasize is that fellows are being given important work. I know that sometimes in internships, you get passed off to do work that is leftover or not particularly interesting. These host companies compete to have the opportunity to have fellows from this program, and they are evaluated each year. And if they do not give fellows a engaging experience, their position in the fellowship is reevaluated. So it's kind of nice that a lot of that kind of managing of the internships happens for you. And you're pretty much guaranteed to have a pretty interesting summer doing important work. And I think that that is something that is unique to these fellowships.
I have another question about the competitiveness of the fellowships. I might have missed this, but I saw that one of them accepted like 24 and one of them accepted, was it 60?
36, yeah.
36. How is that, like 36 out of the entire nation, or is that out of the state of Kentucky, or how does that work?
So it's actually 36 out of, well, the nation, and the Brooke Owens Fellowship is open internationally as well. There's about 600 applicants each year. So it is, I will say, quite competitive. There's lots of people who apply multiple times, and I would always encourage people to do that. And that's why I think that it's a good idea to apply even if you are early in your undergraduate education. Definitely don't be discouraged if you do not get in, because it is so competitive. But yes, it 36 out of the nation, but it's worth applying. I will say, like, it's a very holistic review process, and it's competitive, but it's worth applying. Any other questions?
Thank you very much, Esther. I really appreciate your time for making us aware of this information. And just to remind everyone, we will be putting this recording on the Competitive Awards website and on the Facebook page. And then we will also re-advertise it to the community here at UK, so that people who weren't able to come this evening will know that it's there. And so Esther's information will be in that recording, because we'll have these slides if you weren't able to write that down or take a picture of it. Thank you so much. This was really helpful for me to learn a lot more about it as well, Esther. I thank you a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I hope we get a lot of applicants from UK. Will you know, will at any point will maybe one of the foundations follow up even after the process is over and say maybe there were a few more applicants, or Kentucky, or will we just have to hope?
I probably won't know. I'm not a part of the selection committee. I personally don't join it so that I can help people from Kentucky. It's a conflict of interest, and they don't allow people to offer help if they are on the committee. So hopefully I will know. Definitely reach out to me if you are applying, whether you need help or not, just so I can like root for you off on the side. And tell other people who are part of your programs who have a passion about aviation or aerospace. Definitely.
And I would also echo that to the students who are on this info session, because I know Esther is very generous with her time and very passionate about this program. So I hope if you do have a follow-up question, you would reach out to her. Thank you, all of you, for your time this evening, and especially Esther for your time and expertise.
Absolutely, anytime.
Thank you so much. I hope we'll be doing this for multiple years as we keep growing this program in Kentucky. Thank you. Good night, everyone, and thank you very much.
Thank you.